42nd Street being followed by the lovely Kay Parker. And the equally lovely Jill Nelson. Please, ladies, sit between us. Sit between us, guys. We like that. That way we can ping pong some comments out here.
This will be Bill Margold because he couldn't make it, so we'll just address the water bottle.
He will be represented by a water bottle.
Yeah, Bill unfortunately, what do you know, Mike? Yeah, I guess so. Bill unfortunately couldn't make it for some reason. I could tell a Bill Margold story if we got time for that too. I don't care if it's self-deprecating and
I can tell a few.
puts me in a bad light anyway.
You guys can too.
But we have a true legend with us this afternoon, Kay Parker, a true legend in the adult film industry, and of course Jill Nelson, who wrote The Golden Goddesses, and John Holmes, A Life Measured in Inches, and she's writing one on me called A Life Measured in Centimeters. So, I guess the opening question would be to Kay, what got you involved in the business?
How long do we have?
45 minutes.
Okay, 1976, and I had been studying as an actress, and I'm going to make this a short story.
Okay.
Set of circumstances found me meeting John Leslie. For those who don't know who John Leslie is, John is no longer with us, but he was one of the great legends of adult films, a fabulous person, amazing artist, great musician. And anyway, I didn't know that he was a porno actor when I met him, and we started having this beautiful sharing, shall we say, about non-sexual, about acting. And then one day he kind of just sprang it on me. He said, how would you like to get behind, or get in front of the camera, I should say. And it wasn't until that moment that I suspected that it was an adult film that he was referring to, so.
Well, John, wasn't he like also just happily married too in that time?
Not at that time, no, he got happily married later.
Yeah, but he still worked in the industry. It takes a special lady to not care, but then he got out of it in the 80s with the AIDS scare, I think.
Yeah.
I talked to him briefly one time myself.
But John was an amazing man. Nobody's done a biography of John, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. No.
If you ever have a chance to check him out, a fabulous musician, blues musician, and an artist. I've always lusted after some of his artwork, as well as being a great actor and a funny guy. So at that point, when he offered me the chance to get in front of the camera, I immediately said, is this porno? Because this was San Francisco, and that was the heart of porno at that time. And I said, not interested. And he said, well, you don't have to take your clothes off for this particular role, and the director's a really great guy.
Well, you were actually born in Birmingham, weren't you, England?
Yeah, that's
so how
segue.
Well, I'm just saying that how did a girl from Birmingham in England wind up in the States and then meet John Leslie in San Francisco?
There's such a thing called airplanes, Ken.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I meant. If she gave me that answer, I'd just drop the mic right now and get out of here.
I came to the States in 1965. I had lived in Germany for 2.5 years prior to that. Left England when I was 21. You can do the math, that's okay with me.
Just a bit of a world traveler.
I actually started my journey in the U.S. in Santa Fe, New Mexico, of all places, and gradually made my way west, and landed in San Francisco, and then Marin County, and that's where I met John. So that was 1976, and ultimately I did accept the role, and it was in a film called V the Hot One, which was a takeoff on Fellini's Belle de Jour, that classic movie. And I got to play the madam of the brothel where it takes place, and I was scared silly. I hated my part in it. I thought I was terrible, but that was how it all started. That's the short version.
That's the short version.
Yeah.
And then, like, the biggest hit you had was pretty much Taboo. That was like a huge thing back then.
Yeah, that was a big film.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in that one?
Well, Curtis Stevens, the producer-director, contacted me and wanted me for the role. And he told me what the storyline was, and I refused immediately because I had friends who were victims of incest, and I said, no, I won't do a story about incest. And he kept after me. And finally, those of you who know me, you probably know this already, but I'm a meditator, and at this point in my life, I'm a spiritual counselor. So I always talk to my guides, and I spoke to my guides. I went into meditation. I said, should I do this? And I got a resounding yes, follow this path. So I said, okay, well, I'll do it, and I can at least put some heart and sensitivity into it. And it changed my life, actually. Doing that movie changed my life.
And you were in 3, I believe?
I did, yeah, 2 and 3, and then I said that's enough.
Yeah. Because for you, those of you who don't know, they ran the Taboo theatrically,
Yeah.
and there were lines around the block for this movie.
Yeah, it was a big hit. I mean, back in the, there was a time when there were just theaters that showed adult films. We had them here in Cleveland. They showed them on the drive-ins here growing up.
They did?
Yeah, oh yeah, you'd get that one screen back in the woods that you couldn't see off the highway, and it would show it. And we'd have my dad notoriously cheap. I love to tell this story. Notoriously cheap. His idea of an entire family night out was $2 carload night at the drive-in, so everybody could go for $2. And I got yelled at a lot. Turn around, watch this movie. Turn around.
I
You just see that little screen in the corner. And then what had happened was they started cutting all the trees and encroaching on all the land, and then the apartment building would go, I'm sitting here watching adult films. And that was the slow decline of the adult films at the drive-ins in Cleveland.
Well, they had a theater in New York called the Pussycat. I believe it was on Broadway, and that was where Taboo would open, Insatiable would open. It was just red carpet events, limousines, the whole bit back then.
Yeah. And there were Taboo Pussycat theaters were also in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and oh boy, what year was it? My hands and feet are actually imprinted in cement outside the erstwhile Pussycat Theater in Hollywood, which is now a gay theater. But in those days, we had huge premieres with paparazzi and Klieg lights, and it was just every bit as spectacular, almost, as Hollywood releases. So that was kind of fun. And a little story. Can I tell a little story?
Sure.
So I got down on my hands and knees and put my feet in the cement, and then my hands, and then I wrote my name. And I felt somebody sticking their elbow in my ribs, and it was my then roommate, and she said, you might want to respell that. I had signed my name Kay Paker. I'd left the R out. So embarrassing. So I had to smooth
it out and re-sign your name.
Re-sign. Oh my gosh. But anyway. So, and it's still there apparently. I mean, I can't imagine they've pulled the cement.
The Pussycat was actually, it was a small chain that had to do very well because I'm a film collector and you can still get snips of the Pussycat. It had a great neon Pussycat feature presentation logo, so they had all that. It's like the Mitchell brothers, their little theater made so much, they made their own movies and put in their own posters. And it was just big business for the guys who wanted to take that step into it back then. When it was with Deep Throat, everything got legitimized for that brief period in time before the morality police all decided to douchebag everybody and say it was wrong again. So.
Now we're leaving Jill out now. How did Jill and Kay?
I was gonna. Well, we were gonna. Jill is of course an author. I have a nice lead in for this, and I wanted to ask Jill. How did you pick the subject matter? I want to write a book. I'm gonna pick, interview Golden Age starlets and write a book about that. How did that come about?
Well, it's one of those stories where the story picked me. Golden Goddesses is the second book, and that's the one that I authored. But the first experience was 10 years ago. My husband and I picked up a film, Wonderland, and it was paired with it was Wonderland. If you're not familiar with it, is a story starring Val Kilmer. And it depicts, it's about an aging porn star, or not really aging, but a porn star kind of on the decline, coke, addled porn star John Holmes, who became affiliated with a mobster and some nasty other pieces of work in Hollywood, true story, in the late 80s, and 4 murders took place. And so the movie really depicts the robbery leading up to the murders and so on. And we watched that because I've always been a bit of a true crime buff. And afterwards, we'll watch the documentary called WAD, The Life and Times of John C. Holmes, made by Cass Paley. And so then after I just, did a little bit of research online and happened to find a website for the film Wonderland, communicated with, a few people, and privately a young girl from Michigan who was at the time a math major at Michigan State University. She privately messaged me and said, I'm writing the first and definitive book on John Holmes. She was 21 at the time. I'm like, really? She said, yeah, there isn't one, and I saw the movie Wonderland, and I think that there needs to be one. And then we just, communicated a little bit. About a year later, she asked me to co-author the book with her. So we wrote this, and we interviewed several of the women who'd worked with John, and after the book came out, toward the end of the writing of it, I always had this idea, I think it'd be really interesting to talk to the women of this same generation of stars and celebrities and actors. And so it was through that I communicated with a couple of the women from here. Seika's one of the women we talked to, and she put me in touch with some of her girlfriends, and Kay's one of the ones that I wanted to feature. So Kay introduced me online, I think it was, Seika introduced us online.
Yeah.
And then Kay and I spoke, and that's how the second book, Golden Goddesses, came about. 25 legendary women of the classic erotic world.
You also, along with Mark Murray, had started a charity, the Golden Age Appreciation Fund, for performers who basically have problems making ends meet right now. I know you've helped Kay, you helped George Payne, and now they're looking to help, Annette Hines, who's having problems down there too. So
right.
it's a good thing, like a lot of, probably Kay would probably tell you that she probably got paid a lot of cash on the table for work, correct?
Well, in the day, I was able to earn the big bucks, as it were. Female stars earned more than the men for the most part. But I didn't work that much. I worked as a waitress simultaneously in Hollywood to pay the bills, but people don't know that.
Yeah, you got paid for that role, and then blam, a few days later, that was it until you got another one. Yeah.
And and I get emails from men all over the world. I mean, all the time, every day, especially talking about Taboo, and there's this idea that that life is hunky-dory financially, and so anyway, it's an interesting dichotomy, to be so well known and yet Yeah, I know. Carter Stevens said, the reason, he's in bad shape is because it was all cash under the table and they never declared it.
It's a sad state of the world that we're like that today. People will hire you as an independent contractor so you don't get benefits, retirement pay, and then when that job's up, you're cut loose, and people with, more degrees than I have digits on one hand are working like that, and that's paycheck to paycheck, and that is not going to bode well for any of us as we get older. We're all in that same boat, it seems. Rich get richer, and we don't even get the trickle down they.
But I'm not into lamenting. By
exactly,
the way.
I was going to say, but I'm not like why. There's no reason to be bitter about it or anything. No. It's just part of It's
just
sad,
I have made some
reality.
Amazing friends through the industry, and it's brought me to where I am. And for the last 30 years, I've been doing spiritual counseling and mentoring. And it's been amazing. It's what I believe I came to do.
Right.
But
and even like this weekend, I know you've never really done anything like this, but you had to sit there for the past day and a half going, oh my God, people come up, they're friendly, they're fans, they remember it. It's just nice I like a place like Wasteland where, I'm 53 years old, where I can just honestly say, yeah, I watch porn, and nobody looks at you like you're really gross, and they'll still shake your hand, So, but I love that. I love that about you people is what I like, because I look at you the same way. I have all the respect in the world for you too. So I'm sorry, I get sentimental.
Right.
I just like that. I'm sorry. It just means a lot to me, and I know we've had so many the girls up here over the years that just, they've never done this. They've just looked and said, oh my God, I can't believe you people want to hear what I have to say. So to me, it's just kind of, it's special after. We've had them since Marilyn Chambers was here in 2004, I think, and we've pretty much had somebody every show since. So I just think it's cool. I like the love. You know?
And everybody,
I feel the love, man.
And everybody has a John Holmes story.
And everyone.
Do you have a
None
John
of them
Holmes
are
story?
bad. You have a John Holmes story?
Does anybody have a John
I
Holmes
have many.
Okay.
People keep coming up to
Still
us
have them.
at shows since the book and say, I've got a John Holmes story. Why didn't you put that? Well, people are always going to have a John Holmes story. That's just never ending.
All the girls never have anything bad, though.
Never
Other
anything
than
bad to
that he
say.
stole my ring and gave it to so-and-so.
Right,
And then she had to
yeah,
give it back
yeah.
later.
I actually only met him twice, so
Yeah.
I really didn't have any interaction with him. And even though we were in Dracula together, Dracula sucks, so I lost at first bite. And but it was very brief. It was just one scene, and that was it. And it wasn't. I always said, I will not work with him, quote unquote. I will not work with John. I'm not, so, but yeah, and that's.
But, well, the
only
funny thing was,
interaction.
and I've told some of the people since when we first started working on the book, it was like, anything you read online about John, very salacious, very dark. And so that was one thing, but we thought, and Jennifer being, of course, the math major, wanting to be meticulous, said, yeah, but we have to kind of try to flesh out this whole story. So when we started talking to people independently, they kept getting us aside saying, I don't know what other people are saying. I've told this story many a time, but he was really good to me. I don't know how he treated other people. We heard that time and time again, not just from co-stars, but just from other people too, his godchildren and his who became his stepson, but is not in the book, but was his stepson. We just kept hearing these things over and over again. And even Bob Chin. John drove Bob crazy, the director, Johnny Watt, and they were associated for about 10 years together. But Bob still really loved John. And a lot of his illicit behavior was affiliated with his, drugs and all of that. But people still found him. Jamie Gillis put it really well. I interviewed him for this book, and he said John had this Jimmy Stewart quality about him before drugs, and I thought that's really probably a very apt way of describing it, because you see it in the early films.
I think Pete, because we've always done this together. I think every girl up here, they never had anything bad to say. That it always ended with John really loved women.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the only one who really badmouthed him was Gail Palmer when she was directing him, because he was so coked out he wouldn't come out of the dressing room.
Yeah,
Well, they got into a physical
We've had some
fight.
funny John Holmes stories over the years, and
yeah.
a couple difficult. He was hiding in a closet, crack or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was his addiction's just an illness. So.
Well, when they did a biopic on him, supposedly was called Exhausted, and they had a party in New York for it, which I just was at, and the cops raided the party, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're coming down on porn." They go, "No, it's more serious. This time it's murder." And we're like, "What?" And then the Wonderland stuff came out.
Yeah, were you there?
Yeah, I wandered in.
Wow.
I used to wander into places. I had to look.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because
drunks wander into places and they don't ask them to leave when
Well,
they
I was
act
just
up.
talking to the director. The director of Exhausted's a really good friend of mine, and I featured her in here. And she and I were just talking about that raid last week. So when she had brought the movie up to New York, and it's interesting that somebody was actually there.
I was sitting there when they walked in. I said, "Okay, it's time to drink up and get out."
Little piece of history there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had disappeared, and there was like a nationwide manhunt out for him, and they found him working as a handyman in some crappy hotel down in Miami, I think, or something.
Painting.
Yeah.
Well, wherever you are, John, I hope you're having a great time.
know that everybody tends to say nice things about you.
Yeah.
Here, at least, but we're not very judgmental either. So.
No.
Now, Jill, as far as the subject goes, you did 25 Golden Goddesses, the John Holmes book. Have you exhausted the subject, or do you think you delve a little bit into the?
She should do a book on the men.
Well, right now for me, I needed a break from it because it's kind of consumed. Doing these two books was 7 years straight, and I do have a job. I'm a hearing instrument specialist. I knew nothing about the adult film world before starting the first books, which was kind of interesting. When the books came out, my neighbors kind of opened their doors when they read about I was doing a signing in my hometown. It's like, oh, my neighbor writes porn books? Okay. So I'm in this part of my town called Aldershot, so my husband likes to call me the Aldershot pornographer, which is... But I did think for a time about doing a book about the men, but it's kind of difficult because a lot of the men, the major men that I would like to feature, they're passing on. And so it would be hard because it would have to be sort of second, third-hand stories.
Yeah, especially in the past decade.
Yeah.
Well, we had Jamie up here, and he never let on he was sick.
He never said he was sick, yeah.
And there's, I believe Ashley West is doing something, they're putting out a book, or he must have had a diary or something.
Jamie's.
Yeah, and one of the chapters actually mentions that he's coming up to Cinema Wasteland, a farewell meet to his fans or something.
Yeah, he said, I never wanted, the excerpts were, you know, I never really wanted to do this, but, you know I have such a short time, what the hell, the guy asked me twice, and, you know, or something like that, which was me, and he was like, you know, what the hell, it's going to be my last farewell.
Swan
He
song.
never let on to any of us, didn't say a word to anyone, had a good time, thanked me, wrote me an email. Afterwards said, you know, I just want to thank you again, which was the way it was worded. I just was like, that's weird. And then blammo, we heard it was.
Well, it got better than that because somebody who was running, I think it was Contamination in Missouri was running. He had Seek all the time,
Right.
And for some reason he wanted me to come in, and I says, well, I don't know why you want me, but I can get you Jamie Gillis. I can put you in touch. So I got a hold of our guy. They talked to Jamie. His exact words were, I had a great time at Cinema Wasteland. It was great hanging out with you guys, but my convention days are over. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. He died. So that was that. He never let on. You would have never known he was sick.
Never, no, he was in great.
We were in the bar holding down furniture Thursday night. You would have never known.
Something else to say?
Does Kay have any good stories about on-set incidents or anything like that?
I'll just talk specifically about one of my favorite things about adult films, the porn spoof. Yeah, those were the ones I always liked. And Kay was in like one that I just loved it because I thought it was always goofy fun was Sex World, which was like a spoof of Westworld, Future World, those kind of movies. And it holds up as a fun film today if you get a chance to watch it. But do you have any memories of Sex World?
Big memories. First of all, the first memory was meeting Anthony Spinelli, aka Sam Weston, who is also no longer with us. He was a legendary director in the business, and I went to interview with him, and according to his wife, his wife Roz told me many years later, she said he met you and he fell in love with you, and he wanted you immediately for the role, you know, of this uptight housewife. And I sat there in the meeting, and I said, I'm not sure. I hadn't performed sex before, and it was a sex role. And he said, well, honey, he had this way about him, honey. He said, think carefully about it. So he was being very fatherly to me.
You get the introducing Kay Parker credit in that film, I believe. So.
He said, sorry?
I said you get like the introducing Kay Parker.
Yeah, and but anyway, I again, it was like one of those things. I went home that night, thought about it a lot, and then said, okay. But I will say this, in my book, in my autobiography that I wrote, I've written a whole chapter about the experience of shooting that first film and how it was so otherworldly to me. First of all, it was a large budget film, really big budget. And in those days, my character had to say, I think the line says, this is the setup scene in Sex World, where each person from the outside world specifies what they want as a sex partner. And so my line is, I want that son of a bitch to have huge balls, something like that. And I want him to lay me down and fuck me hard, and I may not like it, but my guy's got balls, or something like that. And it was so hard for me to say that. It was like, that's not who I am, you know? No, I couldn't, no, it's like I was a prude. I was a prude of porn. I used to call myself the prude of porn because, you know, I am British after all, you know, and so I have this thing about me. So, but anyway, so it was really hard for me to do that. And so that was one of the scenes. And then, of course, performing my first sex scene, it was absolutely devastating for me. You know, if you know how scenes are shot, so you do like a wide shot first of all. You kind of get the layout of the land, and then you start moving in closer and closer and closer. And then with sex is shot in several different scenes. You know, there's a wide scene, and then they close in, and right up until the last point, and the last shot, which we call the penetration shot, I was just I was inside of myself, I was having a fit. It was like I didn't know if I could go through with it. And there's this voice talking to me in my head saying, get up and leave now, you can do it, you still have a chance to do it. And then there was this other voice in my head saying, no, you signed a contract, you gotta be responsible, you gotta go through with it. So, but I did go through with it, and it was amazing experience, amazing film. And I met a lot of really great people. It was a huge cast.
Oh yeah, and another one of my favorites is Dracula Sucks.
Yeah,
I mentioned the other night, it seemed like that was a stepping stone. It was a lot of firsts. I think it was Sika's first film, it was Serena's first film. But it was a big stepping stone for a lot of people. And it had a tremendous cast as well.
Yes.
And then, of course,
cast.
I liked it just because it was, Dracula stories.
Yeah.
But any recollections on the set of that one too?
Absolutely. It was produced and directed by a father-son team called Philip and the Marshacks. Right. Yeah. And Phil Marshak actually passed away last year, and I went to the memorial. But I told a story. I kind of told an abbreviated version of what really happened on the set. These two were amazing. They were from Hollywood. They were Hollywood people, so they knew what they were doing. It's just that they snorted too much cocaine, and they got crazy. And and Daryl, the son, was racing around from one part of the set to the other part of the set. We shot it in Northern California in this little mini castle that some gentleman had built for his wife. And down the hill were the stables where we shot the kind of crazy scenes. And so Daryl was on this little moped with a megaphone, and he was racing back and forth from one set to the next. And I said, this guy is going to kill himself. He was so high on coke. And in those days, I always carried a lot of herbs. I mean, real herbs with me. Not because
I did too, but
I was totally against drugs on the set. I mean, I would not.
Yeah, you want
work
to be
with it.
professional about it.
Yeah.
That was the time where they had big budgets,
Yeah.
and it's like, damn it, we're making a movie.
Yeah. So at one point, my friend was doing the makeup on the film, and I said, we've got to do something. This guy's going to kill himself. He's going to go over on the moped and da-da-da. So I called him in, and they had this thing where they believed everything I said. They took to me, the father and son, they both, they said, KK, anything you say. So it's like, I pulled him into the makeup wagon, and I brewed him this cup of tea that was so strong it should have knocked him out. And I said, Daryl, will you trust me? Will you drink this? And he, like a magic potion to knock this guy out. So he did, he drank it, and nothing happened. And they eventually ended up putting him in a closet and locking the door so that he would come down, chill out, get some sleep. It was crazy. The whole thing was crazy. And
sounds like a Mad Hatter Tea Party.
it was. That's exactly what it was like. And John Leslie actually ended up finishing the filming of it. I mean, a couple of the actors had to jump in at the last minute because father and son were out of it. They were just out of it. And they didn't know which way to turn to get the last shots to make a movie, when you...
Which is really odd because when you see it, it looks like it's a competent production. It's fun. It holds up well.
Yeah. Well, you can make magic in the editing room, right?
It's interesting because that's just speaking of Jamie Gillis. That's something he said when we interviewed him for the first book, and we were asking him about Amber, his relationship with Amber Lynn, and they had a relationship with Serena in the 70s and Amber in the 80s, and the big thing that he talked about and that he had a lot of regret about, not personally, but was about cocaine and how it infiltrated the industry. It infiltrated everywhere, not just the adult industry, but he just said it ruined a lot of people, a lot of beautiful people. And he just felt so tragic. Jamie didn't need drugs to get off. Jamie didn't need drugs to do his scenes, just like Kay. He just got off on it. He just didn't, for himself, he just really enjoyed the films and all of that, but a lot of people had relied on these, some of the men too, and that was one of the reasons John got into it, because after doing so many scenes, so many films for a number of years, he felt like he needed a little enhancement, something that was going to give him that extra little zip, especially when he got into the Swedish erotica loops and things like that. But he just talked about the sadness of the drugs and how much it really ruined a lot of relationships that he
Yeah.
was in and other people. He just saw it kill people that he loved. And I thought that was really beautiful when he spoke of that.
Yeah, a little zip is one thing, but yeah, it just gets its claws into you.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
work with people who were on drugs because it was just energetically, it was just too difficult. I think there was only one time when I was really aware that this one actor was high on cocaine, but somehow it was okay. I got through it, but otherwise, and the men, I don't think a lot of the men, they didn't need drugs. I mean, male porno stars, there's something about them. They just have an extra gene or something where they can perform. I know it's a psychological thing, and a lot of people say, well, how do they do it? And I say, well, you have to ask them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They always seem ready to me.
Like, I think Ron Jeremy said something. It was only like maybe 6 or 8 of these guys that he would call woodsmen, but he goes, now because of Viagra, everybody's a woodsman.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
True.
Yeah.
We brought up Swedish erotica loops too, Kay. We like to ask this question. I was going to bring it up eventually, but because you did a few of them.
Me?
You
No.
did a couple. You didn't do
I
any
didn't
Swedish
think
erotica?
so, no.
Oh, I
I've
thought you
never
did.
seen
I don't think she ever did any lube work at all, did you?
No.
No.
Oh, I thought you did.
No,
I thought you.
She came in at the cusp when it was really hitting hard, where they wanted name stars, 35
Right, Swedish
millimeter.
erotica tended to take a bunch of them in that 80s, and
Yeah.
I thought you did it.
And get the little scarves.
That's what I wanted to ask her
Which
about, was the
Seika did a
scarves.
lot of them.
No, my thing was...
Seika said she kept stealing them because they wouldn't clean them. So over the years, she
What?
sold them to fans. Swedish erotica they always had their little scarf. Everyone had a little scarf, but they wanted them back.
Oh.
And Seika was like, oh, that damn thing's nasty. So in order for them to buy, she did a bunch of loops, they would buy new ones if they disappeared. So she kept stealing them. And then she found them, and over the years, she's like, man, I have sold them to some
I
fans.
bet
and
she
made me
has.
some money."
Seika is a great businesswoman. She's a good friend of mine, but she's a great
She's been here a couple
businesswoman.
of times. She's a fun interview,
Yeah,
that's
she's
for
a-
sure.
It's been a great dry cleaning bill, too.
Oh no, she sold them just as pulled them out of the box and sold them. Yeah, but she's a great interview and a fun
It's strange. I didn't do any loops, but I
thought you did a couple
ended up
Swedish
working.
erotica. I was gonna ask about
I ended up working for Caballero, a company called Caballero, who
Swedish.
they produced them all, the Swedish erotica, right, and a lot of other good films. That was when I was making a segue out of the business. They offered me a job as public relations director, and it worked really well because I knew everybody in the business. So I just set up screenings and set out press kits and all of that kind of stuff, and it was really great for 18 months. And then I hung out my counselor shingle.
Gone to something new.
Yeah.
So I said, when you started out, you were like a young world traveler. Experience is wonderful. I love it, life
is.
experiences. They just pile up on you until you have nothing but stories and memories.
Exactly.
Pete, anything else?
Unless you want my Bill Margold story, I don't know.
We don't care. Tell
You don't
Bill
care?
Margold
Okay,
story.
well,
He was supposed to be
He was
here.
supposed to be here. Bill is a legend in the business. He also does, I think he has an award thing too, a whole
Yeah, he's
thing.
got his little charity
Yeah.
thing going too.
Yeah. Well, we were doing the
Legend.
East Coast video show 2 weeks after 9/11. Nobody from the West Coast was flying out to the show. It was all locals, but Bill was there. So Bill is patriotic. He wanted to do something to raise money for the firefighters. So he was going to have this venue, and the girls were supposed to be there, and liquor. And to get in, you had to buy this T-shirt that said, "We don't blow people up, we blow people." So the 2 guys that I'm with are down with this, and I'm like, okay, I'll buy the shirt. So we're going to go to this thing, and they come out wearing the shirt, and I ain't got the shirt. It's in my pocket. And he goes, "You're not going to wear that?" I'm not wearing the damn shirt. Hey, I said, "I'm not wearing the fucking shirt. Realize this." And I go, "I don't blow people. You guys are weird." So we get a cab driver that was Tommy Chong's doppelganger. He has a Poland Spring bottle full of vodka, and the 15-minute ride turned into an hour ordeal. We get there, we walk in, no girls, no liquor, cheap soda, and potato chips. I'm like, I'm out of here. So we walk outside, the same guy, "Oh, what's the matter, guys?" And I'm like, I ain't getting in the car with this guy again. So this Chinese cab driver pulls up, and we go, "Oh, we're gonna get in there." She goes, "You didn't get in that guy's car, did you?" And I go, "Yeah, he drove us here." He goes, "Oh, you made a big mistake. That motherfucker's crazy. I'll take you where you want to go." So that's my Bill Margold story. Unfortunately, nobody showed up. But Bill's heart was in the right place. I don't have the T-shirt. When I walked out, I threw it away. I told those guys, "Take the shirts off. We're not going nowhere."
I'm not wearing the
Yeah. I have just 2 quick things, Bill Margold. Bill Margold's business card If any of you are familiar
I
with
have
it,
it
it's
here.
beautiful. It says, a God created man, Bill Margold created himself. It's the best business card I've ever seen. And also, with respect to a book about the men, Bill said, if you ever do a book about the men, I've got a great title, Pillars of Passion. And I think it's awesome. So there you go.
I know somebody who could draw the cover. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm not being facetious. No, I'm not joking. I know somebody who's good. He drew the cover for my book. It was great. I know what you're thinking. You got a dirty mind.
Yeah, filthy bastards. Well, I got nothing. You guys have any questions out there? Go ahead, Steve. Pudge.
Okay, another guest we've had at Wasteland was Dave Friedman, and Dave liked to cast you in his movies, like Chorus Call and Matinee Idol. You
Yes.
said you got any Dave Friedman stories.
Yeah, well, Dave, Dave came from Hollywood, and so his movies were very Hollywood-like. And, I have a great New York story when I was shooting a film called Chorus Call, and I was playing this Broadway star who was returning to Broadway. And I got to ride in a limousine with a full-length fur coat, sorry, Peter, returning to Broadway. And the final scene of the movie has me being lowered onto the stage, and it was a real theater in New York where we shot this. And I was to get up, it was on a swing, it was a swing, and they were to lower me to the stage, and I was to step off the stage very elegantly and actress-like, and in my costume, and that would be the end of the story. Well, a few minutes before we were to shoot the scene, I'm going, where's my costume? What am I wearing in this scene? And nobody had any idea about my costume or whether there was a costume. It turned out there was not a costume, so they basically just draped a piece of fabric around me and lowered me down. And there was a moment, and I was actually kind of pissed off about this because it was like, it seemed unprofessional, but there was a moment in time where I'm high above the stage and I look down and it's like, who or what is holding me up here? I saw these two guys, so I saw two sets of eyes, and I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden I just started laughing. And they lowered me down onto the stage. I get off the swing, and da-da, and that's it. That was the end of the movie. It was very bizarre. But, these were not like sex movies in those days. I think I had one very minor sex scene in that. They were movies. Yeah. What was the other one you mentioned?
Oh, see, Matinee Idol.
Matinee Idol. Right.
Remake of Starlet, but Dave saw the movie Starlet.
Right, and that was with John. John Leslie was in that movie. Very glossy, very good productions, but very different from all the
Dave
other
Friedman,
films.
bless his soul, was a mentor of mine, and his philosophy was, why sell him the steak? Just sell him the sizzle. So yeah, he never really wanted to make a porn,
Right.
but he was like, everybody loves a gorgeous woman. So like he said, you get a good poster and a half-ass film, I'll make it look good and I'll sell it.
And he did.
And he was, oh yeah, there wouldn't be a Wasteland without David Friedman. I say it over every time his name comes up, and it's true. Bless him. I know he's looking down on me now, smoking a big old stogie.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Mike Franey sitting next to him, trying to figure out how to take over.
chain smoking a million cigarettes. So, I can see Dave with that cigar looking down on us now going, God, I hope my wife doesn't see me. She finally made him quit. For years he'd carry one and I'd be like, man, you didn't pick those up again. Nope, just a prop.
But I really felt like a movie star shooting that movie. Totally felt like a movie star. They flew me into New York and put me up at a great hotel, and like I say, there was a limo and there was a fur coat and there was all this glamour about
Well,
it.
Friedman, like you
Yeah,
said, sell
it
the
was
sizzle.
great.
He was the kind of guy, if there was nobody at his movie, he'd always call the Catholic boards and say, oh my God, did you see the shit they're playing in that theater? And then they'd go protest it. So then the newspapers would come and take pictures of the protesters, and he'd make sure the newspapers got the marquee. And then the place would be full for the 5 o'clock showing. And the man knew how to sell the sizzle.
Oh, it was him that arranged for all those guys.
All
They were
the
gonna burn in
protesters,
hell.
all the protesters were Dave ratting himself out.
The man was a genius. He was a mentored me, he mentored Ken, Mike Rainey.
Now I find out, because those guys were scary.
But he was like, we sell tickets when they're out here. So
It always seemed to me like it was a setup somehow. You get out of a limo and these people would just rush at you with these placards, and they meant business.
with Dave, it was always a setup, believe me.
But the funny part was when they showed up, business boomed. I had a friend of mine who had a bookstore and they protested him. He went out and bought him coffee. He goes, I've never had such a busy day. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a wonderful, Dave was a wonderful, wonderful man.
An interesting guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was also let's not forget Robert McCallum, AKA Gary Graver, who was a marvelous director and cameraman who worked with Orson Welles for many years. And he wrote and produced and directed a lot of really great little films. And they were films. Like, again, very little sex, but he was a master at what he did. So, and I just found out that he passed also.
Yeah,
He's gone. When I first met him, I was called in for the Belle de Jour movie for Be the Hot One, and John had set that up also, and he said, you'll love this guy. He's like an all-American guy, he's like a blonde, blue-eyed surfer guy from California. And I went in to meet him. Sure enough, he was a good-looking California surfer guy. And I was really, really surprised, but he was very, very clever. One of my favorite Gary Graver movies is Private Teacher. That's actually my favorite film. And I do a scene in that movie where I seduce a young man with Shakespeare. It's one of my favorite scenes for any of you that see, go see it, because I'm really proud of that scene. And then I wrote a scene for the movie, which was when, after I had seduced the young man and he's kind of like getting ready to come out and go back out into the world. And we finish our sex scene, and then I have this little dialogue with him. And it's filmed almost entirely sort of in silhouette, and it's really sweet and sensitive. And because that's the kind of girl I am, so it was really nice that I was able to do that.
But one of the
I
I was just going to say, one of the things when I didn't see my first film really in the 80s, saw a couple of Ron Jeremy videos, and I'm not really counting those because that was my first experience, and I thought, I've not really looked at porn, and I was going to be doing these books, and my co-author said we're going to do this extensive filmography, and we're going to review 114 features, 86 loops, and so on, and oh man. And so I remember watching the first film, and I kind of braced myself, and it was one of the Johnny Watt films. I think it was Jade Pussycat or China Cat, and I thought, wow, this isn't that bad. And I found a lot of the scenes and a lot of the work when I got to the Goddesses book, that it was just a sheer pleasure to watch a lot of the movies because the films were shot, as Kay says, so sensitively and a lot of them very beautifully. And so it made the viewing, I can't imagine if I was doing a book about the current industry, it just wouldn't be the same because it's lost its luster and so on. But it was just, it wasn't that bad. And I thought, I was saying to somebody today, it's quite juvenile, I guess, compared to what's out there today. So it really seemed that the scenes were part of the film. They fit with the film.
There was a script,
Exactly.
a real cinematographer,
I have 3 for sale here, by the way. Real scripts, my scripts.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Please talk about it. Anybody else got anything to say? Questions, comments?
Well, I got a comment. Well, they sort of ripped the heart and soul out of the business with the new stuff, because it basically what happened was it mutated right back into loops, because all you have is like comp. Now it's comp. First it was comp tapes, which sucked. Now it's even worse with comp DVDs. Can you go up to 8 hours? So they pretty much reverted back to the loops. But when Kay was doing it, and Jamie and Marilyn, there was scripts, there was sets. Everything had a plot, everything had a
There were
purpose.
actually people on the crew, production when there's a cameraman, a cinematographer, someone doing the lights, a makeup crew. It's like, wow, I really feel like I'm making a movie, and they were.
And now a lot of the girls classify themselves, because when we were at themselves specialists, like I'm an anal, I'm this specialist. I'm like, wow, really?
That's something I want on my resume.
Well, I get calls, emails from a lot of girls, and I'm good at it, politely telling them. But mostly, what it sums up is that we're a drive-in grindhouse celebration here, and I tell them, well, you know, I love the Golden Age stars, we'll call it, because I'm like, I have to draw the line that you have to work on film. And so then they understand what I'm coming about, but it's like, you know, sure, you'll market yourself, sure, and I hate to tell them I'm not too old to watch adult films, I just can't tell you guys apart anymore.
Exactly.
Where we always said growing up, we had our favorites.
Right.
And nowadays, it's just like, you know, well, they're all kind of blonde.
Well, they ran, I believe you guys were at that one in Edison, New Jersey, that show they ran down there, and somebody emailed me and go, "Oh, you're going to be at that show?" I go, "Yeah, can you get me Stormy Daniels' autograph?" I go, "What's Stormy Daniels look like?" "Well, she's a blonde, she's got big tits and a tattoo." I said, "You're talking about 40 people, be more specific."
That's everyone down that road, that row, and the girl behind me.
I remember Ginger told me she was at a show not too many years ago, and she was in line. She had, you know, quite a few people waiting for her autograph, and somebody got up to her and said something like, "Oh, my grandmother, you know, turned me on to your movies." And then Ginger got talking, and she mentioned you.
So the conservative reaction to the Martin in the 70s, but you also had the feminist movement being very vocal about the films that you started. Like, how did that feel for you personally, and what was your relationship with that?
Which was an all-out witch hunt, as far as I was concerned. But I went to testify. I was asked to testify. You know, it was like answer one question and leave the room type of thing. But I was with a group of the attorneys for the industry. The industry's always had like a whole team of attorneys. They have to. And one of them was a guy by the name of John Weston, who's a wonderful gentleman. And he would always guide me. It's like, "John, do I need to do this?" And he would say, "No, Kay, you've done your part," and blah, blah, I'll do this. But anyway, so we were exiting the courtroom, and sorry, forgot about the microphone. And a group of women, very graphic color plates in it of diseased genitalia, which they stuck in my face. And yeah, it was very pleasant. And and I just said, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And they started to, this one woman started to go on a tirade, and I said, "You know what? I have an office, here's my card, call me. I'm happy to sit down and talk to you." But you know, I never heard from them again, but there were a group of women who were so the feminists. I've never been a feminist, but I didn't understand them. They were so angry, you know, and it's like, okay.
So angry. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you know, and the same thing, it was my very first appearance on a talk show, which was on a show in San Francisco called Frontline Video. I believe this was, what year it was, 80, maybe 81. And I didn't know that I was the only guest. I didn't know that they had stacked the audience against me. And it was a very eye-opening experience, because a whole bunch of feminists actually stood up and they started to, it was like if their words had been daggers, I would have been dead 100 times over. But they were just so angry. They were angry about the scene in New York, actually, with all the theaters and the what do you call those guys that talk, the guys that try to lure people into the...
Oh, the hawkers?
Hawkers, you know, hawkers, you know, at that time, because they were all around Times Square. And
get you into their club
yeah.
because they lined them up. So.
Right, and so this one woman stood up and she said, I'm just so, I'm so unhappy and so angry about what's happened in Times Square and all the peep show places and all of that. And I said, "You know what? I'm not crazy about those either, but why don't you take a different route home?" I mean, to me, that was a logical thing to say. Well, then why do you choose to walk past them every night?
Yeah.
And that it didn't bode well for me to say stuff like that. They didn't want to hear that. And I said, well, you know, unfortunately, it's there. And until it's not there any longer, then, you know, you're telling me that it really upsets you, so don't go there. And as I was saying that, this other woman stood up, beautiful, and I want to mention this because this woman is so important for all of us. A lady by the name of Kat Sunlove. She was a dominatrix in those days. Since those days, she has been working on behalf of the Free Speech Coalition and movement, and she's somebody, I think we should all be really grateful to her for the work that she does, very quietly, I might add. But at those times, she's a beautiful blonde, long blonde hair, long blonde legs. Anyway, beautiful, stunning woman. And she stood up and she supported me. She said, I just want to acknowledge Kay for her body of work. And I realized there was a small contingency of supporters there, and it was like I was relieved. But after the show was over, I went back to my hotel room and I sobbed. I sobbed. Well, it wasn't that so much. It's like I sobbed for the sexual shame that exists in our culture. And I said to myself, if you're going to do more of this, you need to get real inside of yourself, and you need to prepare yourself. So it was very eye-opening. But remember that name, Kat Sunlove. She's an amazing woman. Amazing, very important lady. I spoke to her recently, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but anyway, I'm in touch with her.
I was just going to add,
Sorry.
I was just going to say that Gloria Leonard, if you're familiar with her, when she started into films in her late 30s, at the time she had a 13-year-old daughter. She's a New Yorker. Very brilliant woman. She passed away a couple of years ago, sadly, but I did get to meet her, and it was really nice after I interviewed her. But she would go, like Kay did, she would kind of go toe-to-toe with the feminists and say, why are you protesting this? I'm doing what you're fighting for. I'm liberated, I'm making my own choices. And that's one real pet peeve with me is people, the public has this idea that if women enter films, they must have been coerced. If men enter films, it's great, you know, because it's another notch in their belt. And that just bugs me. It's like taking away women's intelligence. Well, an intelligent woman wouldn't make a choice to enter films. It had to be somebody else's idea.
Right.
Drives me insane. And so if you want to, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, okay, then why don't you say that the men who enter films, they've been coerced. It's not their idea. I mean, it has to work both ways or not at all. So I just don't like the way that women and society strips away women's intelligence. That's one of the nice things about doing the book. Each story is so unique. With the Goddesses book, 25 women, all different backgrounds,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people come up here and look at me and Pete and go, wow, the porn industry was really chock full of Catholic girls and Jewish guys. What was up with that?
But varying backgrounds, though, very differing backgrounds. And each woman who entered it, even, you know, some of the younger ones, so women from, say, 18 to late 30s. I think Georgina Spelvin was around 37 when she...
Yeah.
These are not, you know, people who are, you know, being forced, you know...
Georgina told me a great story one time when I met her a couple of times, and she told me acting was hard. They wanted me to run down a hill. I got dirty. They ripped my knees. So she went, no, sex films were much easier.
Well, I'll tell you, the best comeback I ever heard was they had a talk show on, and they were I think it was Tori Wells, Tiffany Million, and somebody else, and they were really being brutal. And some lady got up and went to Tiffany Million, well, what are you going to do with that when you're my age? And Tiffany looked her right in the face and said, honey, I am your age. And she's a bounty hunter now.
Well, ladies, we got anything else to wrap this little panel up?
There are 2 more questions in this room. I can feel them.
Are there? We have time to answer them. Oh, you guys are. All right,
There's one.
go ahead.
Just curious if you had to do any road work promotional wise. So, did you have any stories about what
Did I?
Getting on the road to promote your films?
I didn't, no, and I know a lot of the actresses actually did. They did club dancing after.
Yeah, that actually came a little more into they did the 80s.
I never did that. I was
supplemental.
That's why Annette's ankles are shot.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, my focus was on acting. Because I was a trained actress, and I took it really seriously, even though it was in that particular genre. To me, it was important to do a good acting job and to bring heart and soul to every role. And I really wasn't interested in doing anything else like that. So, they never asked me. Although, actually, backtracking. I did a lot of talk shows across the country. As a matter of fact, I met Oprah. I was on Oprah's show just before she signed her contract with King Productions, and so I got to meet Oprah just before the whole thing blew open. It was really interesting. It was with Seika and Jane Hamilton, Monica Hart. Yeah, it was interesting meeting her. It was great.
One more? Come on, somebody's got to have one.
Yeah, there's one more.
If not, I'm just simply gonna ask it and ask Kay. We were talking about, you know, her and her acting and everything else. And did you have a favorite performer you liked to work with?
Richard Pacheco,
Hands down.
hands down, my baby, my boy.
Every girl has a favorite
Yeah.
performer. And Kay asked me to ask this question, what are you doing today?
Thank you.
That's what I
Thank
was gonna
you.
end with.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that's it, done for porn. Let's get, you know.
I mean, I don't want to get, I mean, it's a totally different life. Although, when I was in the business, I was meditating 2 hours a day. When I arrived in LA, two things happened. I started to seek out an agent and discovered that they were all corrupt in Hollywood. And that the people in porno were much more honest. But at the same time, I met a spiritual teacher and I started my spiritual journey. So I was making movies. I was working in a restaurant owned by Steven Spielberg's mother part of the time. And then every once in a while I'd go off and make a movie. So it was a very diverse existence. But in '85, I hung out my counselor shingle because I recognized that I have a gift of intuition. I'm a healer, and I'm able to help people to track their issues, their pains, and their whatever they need to work on to heal on all the different levels. I'm very gifted, and I have a lot of testimonials to attest to that on my website, which is ktaylorparker.com. So, and I do Skype sessions. So, and this is the time, I think, for all of us to get free, to lighten our burdens in terms of what we carry from through our ancestral line. We carry a lot of baggage. And I'm very good at tracking all of that too, and also to explain certain relationships that we're in, patterns that we have that we want to break. Right, smoking, weight issues, and sexual issues. Actually, most people who contact me to work on their sexual issues, it's usually about something so much older, so much deeper, and and it past lives. So that's my area. That's my thing. That's what I'm here to do, and I'll be doing it for as long as I'm here.
So if someone, if you guys would like to come up and learn a little more and talk with Kay, I'm sure she'd love to talk to you. Just go up.
Sure.
And if you want a great read, I can highly recommend these two books. I read them both cover to cover. Great stuff. So.
Jill Nelson, Kay Parker, please give them a hand. Far ladies, I always like to point this out, that the Cinema Wasteland fans are truly the best fans on the planet.
Thanks for having us. It's been great.
Yes, thank you very much.
And now on that note, come on back in about half an hour and watch the Lancelot Link Secret Chimp Hour.